welcome to the Fighter Series on Red Corner Boxing, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. Last week, the Fighter Series was, of course, on Mildred Taylor. So, of course, we continue this week to the opposition of a fight that took place 35 years ago today. That is the iconic Julio Cesar Chavez. Of course, it was 35 years ago today where he had that dramatic come from behind win over Taylor, albeit with controversy that said fireworks. Well, I'll divulge under that in a bit, but this is more about his career and how he got to this point. Born and raised out of Culiacan, Sinaloa, Mexico, I'm part of 10 siblings. Basically, had a short amateur career, got himself to prominence, basically just filling seats in parts of Mexico where he basically just was able to draw crowds, basically just making whatever money he can to feed a family over there in Mexico. But as his career was progressing, he managed to build a massive record to where he got his first title shot in 1984 when he fought Mario Martinez for a vacant super featherweight title, a title that was vacated by Hector Camacho simply because Camacho didn't want to face Chavez at that point of his career. So we get Chavez versus Martinez, and Chavez just basically just administers a beating to Mario Martinez for about 10 rounds to where the fight was mercifully stopped, and Martinez was basically a bloody mess at that point, and it gave Julio Cesar Chavez his first world title at 130 pounds. He would go on to make 10 successful title defenses of that super featherweight championship. I got a comment here. So I can post this. Oh, yes, he is. Iconic all-time great. The great Julio Cesar Chavez. You're dead right. True legend. Would make 10 successful defenses of a super featherweight championship after he won it from Mario Martinez. Some of the names included are guys like Juan Laporte, Rocky Lockridge, Roger Mayweather, Refugio Rojas, just to name a few. The Mayweather fight, the first of the two they had, was his debut on US TV. It was on free TV on CBS. Nobody knew who he was, going against the crafty Roger Mayweather, who was an established fighter, a one-time champion himself, and in front of a national audience, especially in the States, where he started to become marketed with his promoter, Don King. He obliterated Mayweather in 2 rounds to retain his super featherweight title, and that was where the splash started to begin. As he would go on to have many more title defenses of a super featherweight title, beating guys like Laporte, Lockridge, Rojas, just to name a few. And then he would eventually make his trip to the 135-pound lightweight division, where on November 21st, 1987, he fought the viciously dangerous and hard-punching Edwin Rosario, and what was a true pick'em fight at the time, because basically even money both ways across the board. And the question was going to be is who could take whose punch, because both were known for their punching power and chins. Turned out that Chavez was able to handle Rosario's power better than than Rosario could handle Chavez's. I got a question here. So let me pull it up here. Would you say he's the greatest Mexican fighter of all time? I would say he is, and he deserves that distinction. I will touch on that here in a short bit. But there's a lot of candidates for that distinction. We talk about the deep tradition of Mexican boxing. But it was when he fought Rosario in 1987 and just demolished him in 11 rounds. It basically sent him to the stature of the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. Got a unification fight against Jose Luis Ramirez to basically clean out that division at the time. Moved up to super lightweight to get a rematch with Roger Mayweather. And basically, his will made Roger Mayweather quit on the stool in their second fight. But it was significant because we talk about his stature in Mexican history. It was on that night when he beat Mayweather the second time. He became the first Mexican fighter to ever win world titles in 3 separate weight classes, something no Mexican fighter had ever done. And it was from the Rosario fight, you can see from the Rosario fight on, he started to wear that distinction of the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. Now, after the Mayweather fight came the buildup, the super mega fight that took place on St. Patrick's Day in 1990, the fight against Mildred Taylor, the fight everybody wanted to see. We know the Taylor aspect. He was controlling the fight from minute to minute, round to round, because he was outlanding 2-1. But the greatness and the true warriorship of the great Julio Cesar Chavez showed when he basically just kept coming and coming and coming, and the punches he was landing, he was starting to do damage to Mildred Taylor, and basically Taylor's body and face just fell apart and just turned inside out. And of course, it was that 12th round with about 25 seconds left. The right hand that hurt Taylor, and then a second right hand about 10 seconds later that floored Taylor. We know the story there. Taylor got up, couldn't answer Richard Steele's question if he was okay, and referee stops the fight, awarding Chavez a TKO win in the 10th round, in the 12th round, with 2 seconds left. Of course, we know the controversy of all that, but this is about the Julio side of it, how he managed to dig deep and come back from behind to get the knockout and to cement his place among the all-time greats in boxing history. I mean, you could probably argue that period was really Julio's finest hour from the Rosario to the Taylor fights. After that, he managed to remain unbeaten over the next 21 fights. When he lost to Oscar De La Hoya twice, it was hard to watch. I think he carried on just a bit too long. Of course he did. And you could probably say his real end game was in September of 1993 when he fought Pernell Whitaker. Got a gift draw in a fight where if you saw it, you know what happened. Pernell Whitaker basically won that fight. Of course, a couple fights later, he would suffer his first official loss to Frankie Randall. He would come back to get the revenge on Randall to win a junior welterweight title, albeit under some crazy circumstances. And basically, the two De La Hoya fights and the fight in 2000 against Casa Tzu, as you perfectly said, I'll put this on here again if it'll let me. See, yep. He said he carried on a little too long. I just thought that the greatness of Chavez ended the night when he fought Pernell Whitaker in San Antonio in 1993. All fighters do it. Of course, it was harder for us to watch him because for the modern times like ourselves, we were used to seeing a guy being so great for so long that to see him on his downturn, it was just absolutely crazy. It was just something I never would imagine myself. I'll acknowledge that, because you would think for a guy who amasses an impressive unbeaten record and basically got to the point that he did, and for him to have the downturn that he did, it was basically hard to watch. And yes, it was very strange. Of course, Don King was promoting the fight. What's a Don King fight without promotion? But I said all along, we talk about anything from 94 on, some people want to use it against him. Let me remind you, his legacy was way before all of that, when he cleaned out the super featherweight and lightweight divisions. And of course, the capper was what he did 35 years ago this week in Las Vegas when he came from behind with that dramatic KO win over Meldrick Taylor. That is Julio's legacy. His statue among Mexican greats, arguably the greatest of Mexican fighter of all time. Salvador Sanchez may have a claim to it. Many others, Ricardo Lopez, Canelo Alvarez, Juan Manuel Marquez, and Ruben Olivares, just to name a few. But you can argue he has the distinction, and rightfully so. We talk about some of the great Latino fighters of all time, like Roberto Duran, Alexis Arguello, Sanchez. He's up there with all of them. I mean, the records speak for itself in his accolades. 600 plus wins as a fighter, 6-time world champion in 3 weight classes, 2-time fighter of the year in 87 and 90, and 37 title fights, 31 title wins, most ever in boxing history, something that we'll probably never see touched again. But it goes to show just how tremendously great. And if I can put this one here just wrap it up. Let me. Oh, yes. And not only was that fight with Taylor a classic, it was a 1990 fight of the year. It was also voted as a fight of the decade of the 90s because that was the bar, basically, that boxing and boxing fans wanted. That was the everything fight everybody wanted before, during, and afterwards. And in my opinion, I haven't seen anything that comes close to it because we've had a lot of letdowns. But what made that fight so great? It had high expectations, and it superseded those high expectations. And that will always be number one in my book as far as the greatest fights of my time. And honestly, in my opinion, nothing tops that. And Julio Cesar Chavez was simply a genuine all-time great. Probably could say a top 30, 35 pound-for-pound fighter of all time. Kudos to him to just a hell of a career. And his place in history is forever secure. And that'll wrap up this edition of the Fighter Series on Red Corner Boxing. Hope everyone has themselves a wonderful rest of the 19th, 2025. Till then, take care and God bless.